LFTs, jaundice, ascites. So this case is a very simple case. It will be actually a revision of what you have learned. So when you're tired sometimes for your exam, you just try to go back to the pages which you have already read. So I think this is what we are going to do now. This is an 11-year-old child with acute onset, anorexia, nausea, and jaundice. The presenter is our PG who is from Child Trust Hospital, Dr. Sivanandam, and I think the panelists have been already introduced.
Yeah, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Abba for giving this opportunity. So I'm going to present a child. It's the 11-year-old child, male child, previously well child presented with history of nausea, loss of appetite for 5 days, and history of jaundice for 3 days duration. And history of fever from day 2 of illness, not associated with chills. And child has been given paracetamol 500 mg 4th hourly for 48 hours. There was no abdominal pain, but a history of mild abdominal distension, and stools were pale in color, and urine was high color. There was no itching or altered sensorium, and no other significant history pertaining to etiology or complication. On examination, child is conscious, icteric, and the child was weighing 32 kg, and height is 131 centimeter, and there was no scar, no PTK, pedal edema, clubbing, lymphadenopathy, or stigmata of chronic liver disease. Abdominal examination showed a mild elevation, soft liver, 3 centimeter below right costal margin, and the liver span of 11 centimeter, and shifting dullness was not present, and no splenomegaly, and other systems were normal. This child, you can see mild distension over the abdomen.
So I would like to ask Dr. Vishnu, when an 11-year-old child presents with this short duration of illness, no past history, no relevant significant history, just with nausea, loss of appetite 5 days, fever for 4 days, and jaundice 3 days, what goes through your mind, Dr. Vishnu?
So this is a story of infection, probably a viral infection which is going on, and on the top of it, he received the paracetamol almost in the tune of 80 to 90 milligram per kg per day, and
so you feel yeah. So I think what you feel is this is a child with acute hepatitis. Next slide. Acute hepatitis, probably infective, probably viral, and then in addition, you think there may be a paracetamol liver injury. I think the caring pediatrician also were thinking on the same lines. So this is acute hepatitis because the abrupt onset of illness, you call it hepatitis. Next slide. You call it hepatitis because clinically there's jaundice, nausea, and vomiting. We will be talking about the biochemical and pathological. So the hallmark, I think Dr. John has also told you that increased transaminases more than twice the upper limit of normal should be there for hepatitis. It can be icteric or anicteric. So jaundice is not equal to hepatitis, and you can have hepatitis without jaundice. So hepatitis, when you use the word, there should be an elevation of transaminases.
Can I just make a comment that this is where we actually, as general pediatricians, try to convince the parents that paracetamol is given only to reduce the discomfort and not the fever.
Yes, I think
that will prevent them from overusing paracetamol in such a large way. And yes, because you treat only when the child has got a problem like discomfort, like he's cranky or he's dull. But merely presence of fever does not warrant bringing it down.
Yes.
I think that is the take-home message that I would like to make.
I think Dr. Vishnu has thought about infection as the primary cause, and we all know, we have heard about this, infection is the most. It could be viral, and the hepatotrophic viruses are more common. And then you could have bacterial, typhoid. We see scrub typhus in South. I don't know whether you all also see scrub typhus and leptospirosis. This morning we've been talking about that. Very rare malaria and very rarely fungal. Non-infective, we've heard about, just press the next one. So rapidly you can go. So the drugs, we've spoken, metabolic, we've spoken about all this in the morning. So it's the same repetition. So one should not forget this. The PGs should remember, whenever you think of acute hepatitis, it's infective and non-infective. And in the infective, you have the viral, bacterial, spirochetal, and fungal. So always keep this in mind, but the majority would be the viral hepatitis, in that the hepatotrophic viruses. Next slide. So, Dr. Prakash, as you said, do you think this could be a non-viral hepatitis because of the fever? And if it is non-viral, should we ever differentiate this etiology even when you think this could be viral, this could be non-viral?
Most certainly, because the prognosis would differ and the management would differ.
So
The
very-
one thing that you mentioned was the dose of paracetamol was extremely high. So that does go through my mind that because it could be any cause of non-specific fever till we come to a diagnosis, but the presence of giving huge amounts of paracetamol could have itself led to a liver injury.
So are there any clues for the postgraduates and young pediatricians? This looks more like non-viral. This looks like more viral. In the history itself, would you get a clue?
So it depends on the context of how the patient has presented. If he has come with a low-grade fever, anorexia, jaundice, otherwise
Excellent.
well-preserved child, then I think more likely that I would think of just a common hepatotropic virus like virus A maybe. On the other hand, if it is jaundice in the context of a high-grade fever, nausea, vomiting, then I would think of probably a different cause.
So these are probably like what he says. Suppose the fever is more prolonged, like we had an earlier autoimmune thinking of. If there is pallor, striking pallor, or if there's an SR formulation, or an early accumulation of ascites, significant splenomegaly, or you have a firm liver. For I think in children, you all should remember, it's not the size of the liver which tells you whether it's chronic, but it's actually the consistency of the liver, the firm liver. And if you have extrahepatic manifestations, you're not going to think about a simple viral hepatitis, and if there's a family history of jaundice. Why this is very important, like he said this, the management is going to differ. And unless you think of non-viral, you might not even send that investigation. You might not even send that. I think you will agree, Dr. Yacha, that we have to think in mind, because Wilson can present as the first as acute hepatitis. You can have that. And unless you think that, you don't include.
In viral hepatitis, over a period of 2 or 3 days of observation, the fever will come down and jaundice will start increasing. Whereas in non-viral hepatitis illness, what will happen? The fever will persist,
Yes.
despite the fact the jaundice is going on.
So very important for the postgraduates.
These are very important subtle points. The nausea, vomiting, fever going down, and jaundice persisting or increasing jaundice. That is viral hepatitis.
Yes. So the classic viral hepatitis would be a prodrome, and then once the icterus starts, all the prodrome will stop. The parents will also actually feel better, and then you cover to the convalescence or the recovery, whereas it is atypical or little
Right.
different in the next.
So most important prodromal sign or symptom is anorexia. Anorexia. There are 20, 30 given in the books, but anorexia
It's the
means
most
the dominant
important,
one.
because that you will not see it in drug-induced. You don't get it even in Wilson disease. That anorexia itself indicates it's a hit by the virus on the liver. So anorexia is, I think, very important. So what did you do next, Sivanand?
Coming to investigation, basic investigations were not contributory. Ultrasound examination showed enlarged liver with normal echostructure, and there was minimal free fluid on ultrasound examination.
Did you do any other serial test? Yes.
That's some serial LFT we did, and bilirubin level on day 1 of admission showed a 6.2, and it went up to 10.8 on day 6, and again it became 2.6 on 12th day of admission. More of direct component elevation, and if you see the liver enzymes, more of SGPT and SGOT elevation, 1675 of SGPT and SGOT of 1250, and other investigation is shown in the slide.
This ascites, I think we have been speaking about, and Dr. Yacha just gave a small thing in this morning. Next slide. So what do you think, Dr. Yacha, if you see or you find that there's minimal fluid on ultrasound?
I would not bother.
Next slide.
I would not bother if I find a minimal fluid on ultrasound. I'm not too much bothered about it. But if I find clinically significant on an ultrasound there is a fluid which is convincing, I'll keep alert in my mind. Alert will be that am I dealing with, number 1, is it acute and chronic liver disease or not? Number 2, is it a small manifestation of acute viral hepatitis with ascites? But I have to be on guard for that. It is not that we should always think that something is behind this ascites.
Yes, Dr. Yacha is so clear about that because he seen these cases with ascites. You had always, when we teach you, we used to say when you see ascites, think of underlying chronic liver disease. But as he mentioned, in simple viral hepatitis also, you can get that ascitic form. And you saw it in younger children.
Yes. the end point of this particular study was 1 year follow-up. After 1 year of follow-up, you find that liver function tests are normal, physical examination, there is no liver disease. That was the end point. And I was stimulated to do this kind of study by a pediatrician who at Kanpur told me why that some children were finding young and they have ascites and everything disappears after some time when they have jaundice. So that stimulated me to look into this aspect.
I think
And they
Dr.
were right.
Vishnu also, you have seen cases of ascites in viral hepatitis, I think.
Yes, Miss, when we see the hepatitis pattern, so we talk about hepatotropic viruses and non-hepatotropic viruses. So in hepatotropic viruses like acute viral hepatitis A, we have the prodrome followed by fever, followed by the jaundice, and there in 10% you get ascites. But what we see commonly is the dengue fever, and where you get a massive ascites. So non-hepatotropic viruses, and there are plenty of viruses like enteroviruses we are getting up where there is ascites also present, like dengue, or dengue-like illnesses where the ascites is predominant in the first week itself, but the presentation is like a viral hepatitis. So non-hepatotropic viruses, probably there will be more chances of having ascites that
So I
I feel.
think in our hospital also we've seen.
Yeah.
And what would you think about it? But suppose you see, what went through your mind when you
Now,
saw
Ros-
jaundice and you had ascites next slide?
In our hospital, actually, we have one case series of acute hepatitis A that was done by Dr. Malati, and more of almost 20% of cases with acute viral hepatitis A, they're having ascites also a feature of hepatitis
So
A.
what do you think of when you have, like Dr. Vishnu was saying that he thinks of dengue, whenever you have jaundice, elevated transaminases and free fluid in the abdomen, what does go through your mind?
First, I think viral hepatitis is the most common cause, as Dr. Ajay said. And the reason for viral hepatitis ascites is it may be either because of transient portal hypertension or because of low serum albumin. And usually the typical prodrome is
That can go fast, yeah.
as typical prodrome and elevated liver enzymes, and diagnosis is by IgM. And in typhoid fever, it's because of serositis. Usually affected child will be toxic and splenomegaly will be there, and blood culture usually will grow to Salmonella typhi. And in dengue shock syndrome, it's because of capillary leak that will lead to ascites, and you can see thrombocytopenia and a low pulse volume and shock with dengue serology positive. In leptospirosis, again, it's because of serositis, and you can see features of subconjunctival hemorrhage, elevated muscle enzymes, CPK, and with renal failure also you can see, renal features also you can see, and diagnosis by IgM lepto.
So I think we've already, Dr. John has explained this. So does it give a clue regarding etiology, this high elevation? I think he said that, but probably we can repeat it. And if SGOT is higher than SGPT, just one word answer so that they get like a revision for them.
Yes, Miss. In hepatotropic viruses, you get the SGOT, SGPT in thousands. And always the SGPT is first to rise and the first to come down. And SGOT is the secondary to follow the SGPT. And if you find that SGOT is more than SGPT in the first week of your illness, then that has the significance. Because in the second week, you will get the SGOT which is more than the SGPT, and that will not make you think about that chronic liver disease. So SGOT is more than SGPT in the first week of illness, then you think about chronic liver disease. Otherwise, SGPT is always more than the SGOT in the acute viral hepatitis.
Okay, so this is just a repetition slide.
Or dengue, yeah, dengue,
Yeah, next slide.
SGOTs. Yeah.
Can I just add something that
Yes,
in
you can go back.
our country we should never lose sight
Previous.
of the possibility of a typhoid hepatitis, and there is a paper from your institute itself
Yes.
where it absolutely simulates viral hepatitis, except that the LDH levels are much higher. So
LDH
you may-
SGPT ratio is less than
Yeah.
4 in case of typhoid, whether it's more than 4. But sometimes, the toxicity, and that's why we say Salmonella typhi, it's not just the antibody positivity, but must show it on blood culture, because your treatment is going to be different. You just can't think
but
it's viral.
Dr. Bala's paper from Kanchi
Bala's
Kamakurti,
paper, yes,
it
that's
showed
the
a
one.
ratio of 9, not 4,
Yes.
in children.
Cutoff is 4.
No, this one, LDH SGPT.
SGPT upon LDH ratio more than 9 was there in regular hepatitis and less in a typhoid hepatitis.
In viral, it will be higher.
In viral, it was higher. But the cutoff was 9 in Dr. Bala's case series.
Okay. Anyway, this is like what you have all said. I think this is what the treating this also thought about? You
Yes,
thought
ma'am.
about the same thing?
Elevated SGPT, OT, and the possibility of viral hepatotopic virus, hepatitis A, I thought. And
But
we
if
have
you
to check.
had it lower, then probably you would have thought of metabolic. And if
Metabolic.
you had, like he was saying in dengue, you get SGOT much higher in more than 10,000s of toxic hepatitis.
In case of marked elevation of SGOT,
So you
PT,
did send paracetamol level.
yeah, we have to send paracetamol level also.
Other corroboratory evidence will be there in dengue. See, one is the continuation of the fever. Number two, you will have the platelet counts may be low to begin
Thrombocytopenia.
with, which will not occur in acute viral hepatitis.
You will
There
not
is a
get-
very small proportion of patients where there may be persistence of the fever and jaundice going on for some time. We had one case presentation at Indore during Pedicon
Yes.
conference. That was, and ultimately turned out to be viral hepatitis. Fever, just persistent fever there, Vishnu. So the possibility of dengue, we have to take everything into consideration, persistence of fever, low platelet count, and of course,
Capillary leak.
capillary
Readily.
leak. You
So
can't confuse
in our place, we also have this scrub typhus and then the chikungunya presenting with low platelet.
Yeah, there can
So
be.
all that fever and low platelet, please start thinking little differently rather than
Different.
just and like this morning HLH. Slowly it will proceed to HLH also, and then you land up in a swoop. That's so.
Right,
These are important. Next slide. So I think Dr. Prakash, we already listened to this, but I think you can explain to them your interpretation. This child had on the first day 2.9 albumin and then 3.1, and by discharge 3.2. Prothrombin time was this.
Yeah, so prothrombin time is an acute reactant, and immediately after the onset of hepatocellular dysfunction, you expect a change in the prothrombin time. But albumin directly actually is not expected to change so immediately. It's a reflector. But in a hepatitis, infective hepatitis 2, after maybe in the first few days, the albumin will drop, but probably because of no recovery, it would tend to recover also.
Okay. So Dr. Yache, should we check paracetamol level in this child who has been given 6,000 milligram in 48 hours? That is 100 milligram per kg per 24 hours. We were talking about this. Either you have paracetamol toxicity and as an acute poisoning, or we call this as a therapeutic misadventure, where the parents are very keen on bringing it down, so they keep repeating
Now,
it.
you have stopped paracetamol in this
Yes,
patient?
no, they've come with that 48 hours before. They've come with that with jaundice. They've come.
After
I would
admission,
not like to do. I
will
would
not be
just
doing.
clinically see this patient. That's all. See, it is not possible to do these levels at every level. We should not think that India is very rich everywhere. In Bombay, Bangalore, we can do all these things. But in rural sectors, what do you do? In districts.
So
So
there's-
I would go more for a clinical evaluation, wait for some time, see what is the trend. If not, then certainly
So
yes.
in this child, I think it's not necessary because, like he said, it was given 100 milligram per and the supratherapeutic
Very high
dosage,
dose.
You can do if
You
it is
can.
within 24 hours if they've taken more than 200
So
milligram per
what I will
kilogram.
do, monitor more is INR. If
INR, that's
INR is showing me a trend downwards, I'm not bothered. If INR is stable, it's increasing, I'll certainly go. for
Suppose
it.
this child-
Because it will entail the introduction of N-acetylcysteine in this child if it is paracetamol induced.
So suppose this child did not have anorexia, did not have nausea, but had come straight with fever and paracetamol, you'll be little more active and aggressive in finding out. But in therapeutic misadventures, remember that normogram is not going to work and you will not have much criteria and you use little different levels. So within 72 hours, if you've given more than 100 milligram per kilogram, and like he said, you have to look at the ALT, you look at the jaundice, and you look at the INR. And then by chance, if you have some intuition that this could be paracetamol, then probably you can, because you can save a child if in case it's going in for acute liver failure.
And
treatment.
N-acetylcysteine is not very expensive. It is available easily. It can be started if you have hideout. If your apprehension is more about paracetamol poisoning, you can start N-acetylcysteine levels. How many days it takes, I don't know. I've never got it done.
7 days.
7
Which
days.
one?
By 7 days, the patient will be somewhere
Paracetamol,
else.
paracetamol levels.
Levels
So
will
it is
get within
better.
hours.
At that
Yeah,
time,
yeah. No, paracetamol level we get within hours.
what he
No,
saying,
the same day you get the report.
Same day we get the report, and only thing is I want the PGs to remember that normogram you cannot use.
Then
you
you
can't
can-
use
you can
that
do it.
old
You
value.
can
You
do it.
just send it and we get it within hours. So we can even stop. You can
Yeah.
start and stop. If there is some doubt that the parents are not sure about how much they've given, and you feel like initially itself you said it could be, then probably you can, and then you can stop. Next.
right.
So what do you want next, Dr. Prakash? Is it sufficient acute hepatitis? You made a diagnosis, you've got the biochemical.
No, I would most certainly like to know the cause of that acute
Cause,
hepatitis, whether it's a hepatotropic virus or something else. And the commonest in our country is hepatitis A. So definitely I would send hepatitis A IgM antibody,
So
as
I
well
think
as probably a...
Experience speaks, and anti-HIV IgM was positive.
Yeah.
But I think because this child was admitted, then, and we had a lot of dengue, we had the scrub, I think they did all the other tests also.
For investigation for etiology continued and viral serology anti-HIV IgM positive, and then other viral markers were negative.
Faster.
Absolutely.
Now, next question, not needed, we are going to ask. Now, we are going to ask that question. That question is going to be asked now. This is,
So other indices like blood culture was no growth, and IgM, leptospiro, dengue, and scrub types were negative, and serum ceruloplasmin was 28 milligram per deciliter, and paracetamol level less than 10 microgram per ml,
next.
and autoimmune markers were negative.
So what are the essential investigations if the child is not hospitalized? Suppose it is a daycare child, just comes to your outpatient and goes, what would be the only test you will do for the viral marker?
Most certainly a hepatitis A IgM and possibly a hepatitis B surface antigen.
Okay, I think that's the thing. And if we restrict investigations, Dr. Yacha, do you think we will miss co-infection? Are you worried about all that?
No. I told the same thing there also in Indore. See, co-infection don't get bothered. 25% of children who have got viral hepatitis have a co-infection of A along with E mostly, and there may be a small percentage of combination. But does it adversely affect the outcome? Co-infection versus single, it does not.
So
it is clearly shown in that paper prospective study which has shown this. Don't worry about it.
So unless they are hospitalized, the message is just stick to at least hepatitis B surface antigen. You don't even have to do anti-HIV IgM, but then if you want to know the etiology, parents want to know, then you can do that. Next slide. So the
my question was anti-HCV should not have been done.
yeah, it should not
Correct.
be
You
done.
are right.
Should
That
not be done.
observation is correct.
Should not be
Many
done.
of the people do anti-ICV
Because
unnecessarily.
it
when
comes
it's
like
on
a
the
panel.
Yeah.
That panel, please stop doing panel, because afterwards when we ask you to read the panel, they don't know what to do. So no panel, think what you're ticking and then do. No panels here. So the complications of HIV, we know it's a self-limiting illness, but we do see some. We're not going through everything. Already mentioned cholestatic, which can even be pruritus for 12 weeks, acute liver failure, relapsing hepatitis. Next slide. So the importance, Dr. Prakash has already mentioned it, the child may require hospitalization. If it's a non-viral specific treatment, it predicts prognosis and you prevent the contacts and the siblings also. So when you admit a child with acute hepatitis, Dr. Vishnu, when it comes to you, when will you admit?
I think the refusal to feed or the diet is not good and persistent vomiting, the altered sensorium, or there is a decreased urine output, then definitely we are going to
So
admit
what we
the
say,
child.
the red flag signs and symptoms should be there. You don't have to admit all children with acute. What do you think, Dr. Prakash? Do you agree with this?
Yeah, the
that-
majority are manageable on an outdoor basis, but as you said, all these red flag signs, persistent vomiting, dehydration, a doubt that he is worsening into encephalopathy, any bleeding from any side, and oliguria, certainly these would be the reasons too. And when I'm worried that he's going in for a acute liver cell failure, and these are the signs that will suggest. But most of them can be managed on an OPD basis.
So here the final diagnosis was acute viral hepatitis, child recovered, and there were no complications. Next slide. So I think Dr. Yachar, how do you manage an uncomplicated acute viral hepatitis A?
Reassurance to the
Reassurance.
parents. Number one. Number two,
Reassurance.
yes, when they are in the first phase, when they have nausea and vomiting, I'll tell them, please don't use glucose water or Glucon D because it is going to increase your nausea. So I may give a simpler drug, which is maybe antiemetic for severe vomiting, not otherwise, and give some kind of a placebo therapy, maybe a B complex, just to console them that I have treated the patient well. That's all. And plus, I will give an advice very vehemently that don't stop spices, don't stop fat. As long as the child is able to take ghee and butter, allow. If not, then you allow it. Please don't punish the child for yellow eyes.
Yes.
And
don't
this
stop.
is my slogan actually. What happens? The parents give ice creams, pani puri, all sugar cane juices outside. They give money, and child gets sick. And when they get sick, the parents again punish him. Punish him, that stop everything. So that advice we have to give them, and direct your nutrition, normal nutrition toward the child. Talk to children rather than parents. This is the art of communication. Because once you tell the child, he will say you should ask, what do you eat the most? What do you like the most? He will say, I eat paratha. I like dahi. I like milk. You say, you can take all these things. See, because this child will now go home and will say, the doctor has advised me this kind of food, you give it to me. If you tell parents, they will not take.
So I think that's a message for all of you. We should tell them.
You should direct your advice to the child. Communication, I was recently giving a talk somewhere where how you should communicate as a pediatrician with the patients. And one of the articles I read that doctors don't communicate to the child. You should communicate more with the child who can understand rather than the parents, then it becomes very effective.
So I think we
It
should
becomes
do that.
very effective.
And then they need not avoid turmeric. They won't put anything yellow because the eyes are yellow. So please tell them
When
that.
parents fail in convincing their child, they will tell you, doctor, help us out. He's not listening to us. He's not listening to us. And when actually you should tell the child yourself, then parents, that turn will not come. Children understand better. They understand better.
So I think before we give the take-home messages, what were your differential? I think you can just run through that and
What about complementary drugs, indigenous drugs that people use for?
No drugs, no.
The parents have to be told that no drugs.
We tell them no Ramdev drug. We tell them no Ayurvedic, no homeopathic drugs. We are allopathic people who believe in evidence-based medicine. They do not work. They may do more harm to your child rather than benefit. This goes over a period of time, 4 to 6 weeks, that you have to reassure them. Don't worry about the jaundice. Otherwise, you will get every third day WhatsApp or a call from the parents in private sector particularly that my child still has not improved. You have to tell them beforehand that it will take 3 weeks' time for resolution of the symptoms and maybe 4 weeks at time. Don't worry about it. So this is the art of communication which some of the doctors do have. I think most of the doctors.
so during
have
recovery, actually the appetite will improve so much, but the parents will not give. So the appetite will be really good because as the new hepatocytes start coming, the appetite improves.
Nutrition
big.
plays a very important role. Don't stop the nutrition.
So among differential,
Just like to run through this, and I think we'll close.
among differential diagnoses of the hepatotropic virus, hepatitis A and E, both more or less present as same. But in hepatitis A virus, it's more of liver failure in less than 1% of cases, and vaccine is available for hepatitis A. In hepatitis E, usually epidemic and no chronicity, and diagnosed by anti-HIV IgM. And hepatitis B infection is more of prodromal symptoms with extrahepatic manifestations, and features of chronic hepatitis are more common and diagnosed by HBsAg and anti-HCV IgM. And vaccine is available for hepatitis B. In Epstein-Barr virus, usually clinical features will be fever, jaundice, and cervical lymphadenopathy with prolonged transaminase elevation. Compared to other viral infection, the prolonged transaminase elevation is peculiar for IMN, and it can precipitate autoimmune reaction.
This I think we've already covered.
Yeah,
So
already covered.
second point is regarding the talking to the parents. sorry for interruption, if it is the acute hepatitis B, viral hepatitis, we have to tell them, repeat this surface antigen after 6 months. That is the mandatory requirement because 98% will clear this virus by that if it is hepatitis B positive. Then we have to tell them 6 months later we have to come again, we have to do LFT, we have to do HBC. For other things we don't need to do. E and A we are not bothered.
Yeah, non-hepatitis.
No, hepatitis B I am talking.
He just put all the virus. No, he put
first
the viruses
viruses.
together. I think this we can run to the next slide.
Typhoid usually affected child will
I
be
think
toxic
scrub
and
typhus,
scrub
typhus
typhus.
they have seen.
Yes, we have one case series among scrub typhus, and SCAR is actually seen in 60% of our patients in that study.
Less than that.
Yeah, usually thrombocytopenia.
With normal hematocrit is normal. Thrombocytopenia with normal hematocrit in scrub typhus, whereas the hematocrit will be increased in dengue. Next slide. I think this we've also
covered already.
So you can sum up and give the messages.
Coming to take-home message, child with anorexia, nausea, and jaundice of short duration of diagnosis is most probably acute viral hepatitis. Transaminases are usually more than 20 times upper limit of normal in acute viral hepatitis. All children with acute viral hepatitis need not be hospitalized, and hepatitis A infection does not progress to chronicity. Acute liver failure is in less than 1% of cases of acute liver cell failure. In acute viral hepatitis, prevention is possible by following hygienic practices and active immunization with either kill vaccine or live vaccine. Thank you.
And I should thank my panelists for this interesting discussion, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
No debate.